Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. A few people still farm the way folks did before tractors, with horses.
If you're careful enough to use horses, you're more concerned about what you're growing and you're more in tune to, and you're paying more attention so you grow better food.
Kentucky artist Lacy Hale's No Hate in My Holler screenprint may never go out of style. Appalachians are still telling her how much they identify with its message.
Having something that they can get behind and say, look, we're not all backward. We're not all the stereotypical, homophobic, racist hillbillies.
And a Virginia poet reflects on what's helped his writing.
I really very much have been nurtured by so many teachers as well as writers. I think the Appalachian writer community is very strong, and I'm thrilled to be part of it.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Before the tractor, farmers in Appalachia relied on workhorses to plow fields and pull their wagons. In southwestern Virginia, the practice has mostly disappeared, often along with the farms themselves. But a few farmers never let go of farming with a horse. Folkways reporter Connie Bailey-Kitts has this story.
I want you to just see how steep it is. Get up. Hey.
Today, Charlie Burnett and his horses Jeb and Rose set off to mow on a hillside with an incline of almost 55 degrees. We're up on Periwinkle Mountain in Wythe County, Virginia.
My biggest field is 4 and 6 acres, and it's mountaintops.
Where Charlie grows oats, puts up hundreds of bales of hay, and hauls wood for fuel. The land has sustained his family for generations.
This was a farm that you grew a garden. Maybe you grew 3 acres of corn. That fed the cows that you milked every day.
This was typical family subsistence farming in this part of Appalachia until about the 1950s.
All the areas in the Blue Ridge and Appalachian region got rid of their horses when they went to farming with tractors.
But not Charlie's family. They stuck with their horses for safety reasons, not wanting to risk rolling a tractor.
We had a team out of necessity here. We still have to have a team of horses here on this mountainside.
But the workhorses of Charlie's youth are harder to come by these days. So 15 years ago, he started breeding farm workhorses, like the old-style Belgian workhorse. Inadvertently, he timed things well because when the pandemic raised concerns about food security, more people started to turn back to traditional farming practices. Everybody I talked with about workhorses said there was one man I needed to meet, someone who had done this his whole life and was still farming. His name was Danny Wingate. Sadly, not long after I caught up with him, he passed away. The day we met, he was at his sister's house in Wytheville, Virginia.
Come right on in.
Thank you. Danny had brought along a photo album of his farm in Grayson County. He showed me a picture of his wife, Clevie, sitting behind a team of horses during potato harvest.
If you're careful enough to use horses, you're more concerned about what you're growing and you're more in tune to your soil conditions and fertility and you're paying more attention so you grow better food. Most of the time people it's just wanting to go back to the land. They're concerned about what they're eating, where their food's coming from, the supply of their food, how many chemicals is on what you're eating.
With horses, you can reduce the need for chemical fertilizers. Composted horse manure helps supply that. It's a soil fertility practice encouraged in the regenerative agriculture movement. And horses don't compact the soil like a tractor either, Danny said. Of course, if you're planning to farm with a workhorse, the first step is finding one.
They've almost let the old-style horses die out, being thick-bodied and good quiet minds and big-boned and a slower, more docile kind of horse, easier to get along with.
These traits got lost when many farm workhorses were crossbred to make more of a carriage horse or hitch horse. They became taller, longer-legged, showy horses, and they could sell for much more than a farm workhorse.
The Belgian horses and the Percherons are a totally different horse than they were even when I was a teenager.
And that's why Danny was excited about the horses his friend Charlie Burnett was breeding. We met Charlie at the beginning of the story up on Periwinkle Mountain.
Charlie's trying to preserve a breed of farm horse. And if you look back in the old Breeders' Gazettes and stuff from the turn of the century, when they were importing them, the horses they were coming here then were just like what he's raising now.
And back on Charlie's farm, I see firsthand what Danny was talking about, why it's good for an Appalachian farm workhorse to be short, sturdy, and sweet-tempered.
It is heavy.
So swing it.
Yep, you kind of sling it. Say, easy, Rose. Sling it up on it.
Easy, Rose.
There you go.
Oh, gosh, you might have to help me.
Okay, give it a toss.
Even though I need a little help with the harness on this first try, Rose's withers are not that much taller than I am. I got it on the second try. Most of Charlie's 8 horses are about the size of Rose, and it's a result of his breeding efforts over the last 15 years.
This is senior horse feed. More fiber, more fat.
2 of the mares get extra grain today. Each one is nursing a foal born 3 weeks earlier. The Blue Roan broodmare is a purebred American Brabant.
This is a horse I'm raising these colts out of to kind of be what I think is going to be the next generation of the workhorse for the Appalachian region. Gracie is the American Brabant breed for people that's looking for a heavy horse but short so you can harness it better.
The ancestors of this breed were the Belgian horses that came to America in the 1880s from the Brabant region of Belgium. Their bloodlines were undoubtedly in some of the old Appalachian workhorses. But keeping track of bloodlines was difficult.
And there was crosses from all these horses because these people weren't concerned about registry. These people were concerned about having a horse big enough to do farm work with and to make a living with and not cost you a fortune to feed. They didn't have no money.
When Charlie started looking for this old-style horse, he luckily found some American Brabants right here in Appalachia.
Gracie here is she's just barely 16 hands high. She has huge legs, huge girth. Gracie weighs about 1,800 pounds. So she's not a small horse when it comes to size, but her height, she's not tall.
Charlie's 2-year-old fillies, Roxy and Kate, have the characteristic blocky heads and thick necks and are already trained to drive.
This is what I remember seeing in the mountains when I was growing up, and I seen them have workhorses.
A little colt, Jasper, blinks his long eyelashes. He pushes his soft muzzle against my microphone, and that tells Charlie something.
But what I am really, really noticing, and it's really what I like about them, is how docile and how friendly they seem to be.
And that disposition is critical in making a workhorse your partner. So just how do you learn to gain the trust of 1,800 pounds of horsepower? Charlie and Danny learned this horse relationship craft from their grandfathers and uncles. But it's not so easy to learn these days, Danny said.
You can watch everything on YouTube and learn and see how people do it. But until you do it hands-on, it's a totally different thing.
You really need to work alongside a mentor, Danny said, with someone who has skills in reading the horse and skills in building trust.
If a horse slings his head all the time, a horse won't tell you a lie. He's telling you that something's wrong. It's your job to figure it out.
In fact, training the drivers is probably more important than teaching the horses.
Really what you need to do is go somewhere where there's somebody that can show you for a while, like a little apprentice program.
And Danny had reason to be optimistic about traditional horse farming practices being passed on.
One thing about most horse people, they're really generous with their time and knowledge. Most older people are like me, they really want to see young people succeed. Most people are more than willing to share their knowledge because they see it getting gone.
And one person who was on the receiving end of Danny's knowledge is Charlie Lawson, who lives at the foot of Paint Lick Mountain in Tazewell County, Virginia. Charlie's always been a horseman, and with Danny's help, he found his first team of workhorses. With his current team, he's working a large garden.
Well, I'm learning about this regenerative agriculture, basically relearning the secrets the old ancient peoples had.
He says he's tired of not knowing what's in the food he's eating, and he doesn't want to be dependent on diesel fuel to run a tractor. Today, he's ready to plant potatoes, some 1,300 feet of potatoes.
Well, we're trying something that we haven't tried before, which is using a cultivator to open up the furrow.
That was last spring, and this winter, Charlie's family enjoyed dozens of quarts of beans, beets, corn, tomatoes, and potatoes grown with the help of good old horsepower. It was Charlie Lawson who conveyed the sad news to me that Danny Wingate had died just as I was finishing this story. Local news stations paid tribute to Danny's iconic role in sustaining the folk arts throughout the region. And for me, Danny Wingate had brought to life not just the utility, but the beauty of preserving and passing on our old ways of farming with horses. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Connie Bailey Kitts in Wythe County, Virginia.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. For more Folkways stories, visit our website, wvpublic.org. In Pound, Virginia, near the Kentucky border, there's a mural that depicts an old woman smoking a pipe and holding a baby wrapped in a big bright quilt. The mural honors Nancy Mullins Shores, a beloved local midwife. It's part of a growing body of work by artist Lacy Hale. Her work includes the viral image No Hate in My Holler, originally a screenprint Lacy designed in 2017 in response to a Nazi rally. In 2022, I talked with Lacy about that enduring image. But first, I asked her about that mural of Nancy Mullins Shores.
We had several community meetings to see what the projects were going to be about. And this Granny Shores kept coming up, Granny Shores, Granny Shores. When talking about Granny Shores, I found out that she was a midwife in the very early days of Pound who delivered over 1,000 babies. So she was born in 1867 and she passed away in 1945. Her husband was a doctor and she went apparently to some of his appointments with him, and that's how she kind of got into becoming a midwife. She boasted that she never lost a mother and she lost very few babies. So basically everybody early on in Pound, Virginia was delivered by this woman, this Granny Shores.
So she literally birthed the town in some ways.
Basically, yeah, she's the mother of Pound. Yes. I also forgot to mention that, for the folks that may not click over and see the picture of the mural, that she is smoking a pipe. And she's holding a baby, but apparently she was rarely without her pipe. That is something that, I heard over and over again, that she always had a pipe in her mouth. Yeah, she was quite the woman, apparently.
What a woman.
Yeah,
that's
right?
Incredible.
Yeah.
This Granny Shores mural, you see her, but then a lot of it's dominated by this very prominent quilt. Can you tell me more about that?
Whenever I do a piece of public art, if I'm working with the community, I want the community to be involved. I cut all these 9x9 pieces of polytab, which is basically parachute material. And I broke those down into a 9-square quilt. And we had a community painting day. We had paint markers and paint pens, and we let people from the community come, and they got to sit down and fill out the quilt any way they wanted to. It was kind of like a modern day quilting bee, I guess, because they could sit there with their own little quilt square and decide how they wanted to make it. And then so there was younger people. I think we had a kid there that was probably 4 or 5 that did one, and it was more like a Jackson Pollock splatter type. He was just slinging this paint all over his quilt square. And then there was a younger person who did kind of an abstract. It was really cool to see what the community members came up with. So so some of the quilt squares were more traditional. There was one that had strawberries drawn and the different squares. There was one that was just very muted tones. Each square had a different color of a muted tone. There was some that were wave. It was almost like an 80s waves of neon vibrant colors that didn't really stay within the squares. I knew once they were installed on the mural itself and the mural was put up, that all of these pieces, even though they were very different, would make a cohesive quilt. And just like a community, we're all different and we can work together and make this piece that is vibrant and colorful.
I wanted to ask you just real quick about No Hate in My Holler. It's like an evergreen, right? That design is going to be mentioned in the first couple of paragraphs of your obituary, probably.
Probably.
I mean, I think you will top yourself. I mean, that sounds morbid the way I'm phrasing it.
Oh, no.
But you and I are at the age where you start to like have things, you start to count, your life starts to be defined a little bit.
That's true. Yeah.
How did you first come up with that design?
So in 2017, I was actually working with the Appalachian Media Institute at Appalachia here in Whitesburg, and we were working with youth, and we got word that a group of neo-Nazis were coming to recruit in Pikeville, which is about an hour from here. And so one of the youths suggested that we have a art and response day, which I thought was awesome. So we decided to do that. And the night beforehand, this phrase just popped into my head, no hate in my holler. And so I do a lot of printmaking. I do a lot of block printing. And so the next day, we had the art and response, and I just sat down and sketched it out and, cut a block and carved it and printed it. And no hate in my holler was born, posted it on my Facebook, and it kind of, blew up. So people really took to it and identified with it. And like you said, it's kind of for the last 5 years, it just keeps cycling and growing. And it's not always been for the best reasons. I mean, sometimes when something horrible happens, there's a influx of desire for more of the t-shirts and stuff like that. But, I always donate at least 25% of the proceeds from any of the merch that I sell with No Hate in My Holler to nonprofits working toward equality in the regions.
I think it's like the best of art in that it's taken on its own life once you kind of set it free in the world. What stories have people shared with you about it? And what kind of stories have come back and left an impression on you?
I've had so many people reach out to me and sorry, I might get a little teary-eyed because it's really just some of the things that people have said that how important this has been to them, either growing up here, being from here, living here, and having something that they can get behind and say, look, we're not all backward, we're not all the stereotypical, homophobic, racist hillbillies. I have a friend who, she messaged me the other day and she was like, as a lesbian who has an African-American daughter, I appreciate this so much. And, that means a lot that I can do something for people around here. That really means a lot.
So this design's 5 years old now. What do you think it means today?
Hopefully now we're at a point where this does not need to be said anymore. And there's always something new that happens that, okay, so, this does need to be said again or reiterated in some way. No Hate in My Holler is probably the piece of artwork that I've made that I'm most proud of. And it probably, if you want to know something about me, look at that piece and that should tell you all that you need to know.
Wow. Yeah. What else did you want to say?
I think that's it. I'm going to start crying again.
Lacy Hale, thank you so much for speaking with us on Inside Appalachia.
Thank you.
That's Lacy Hale, Eastern Kentucky artist. Her newest mural stretches down a flight of stairs in Whitesburg, Kentucky. It honors the 2-year anniversary of the historic floods that struck the region in 2022, as well as a local drug recovery program. We asked Lacy to tell us about it.
The design is a blue sky with a big sun at the top, and there's a redbud tree that is reaching toward the sun and like really blooming and full and thriving. And then there's a calm stream at the bottom, and there's some mountains in the background. And then there's at the bottom, there are these like little, I call them orbs, but they're circles of like different colors that kind of represent flowers or hugs, like the XO. This summer, I've had an assistant paid for by the Cowan Community Action Group. They do so much good work in Letcher County, and they've placed, I think it was 45 high school students in different businesses and nonprofits in Letcher County. So we got an intern. So she helped me prime the mural, and she'd help me mix paint. She helped me get ready for community groups to come out and help us paint. And so we were finished with the community involvement portion, and we were sitting there on the steps. We were going to go in and fill in detail. We were talking, and she was like, you know what? Wouldn't it be cool if community members could come and add their thumbprints and paint to represent the redbud blossoms? And I just was like, you're 16, 17 years old. Like, that's one of the best ideas. I was just blown away. It was so awesome. Her name's Chloe Webb. And I was just thrilled. And I was like, yes, let's do that. And so that just made, so many people came out and added their thumbprints and would take pictures and remember which step they were on, and families would come out and put them together in a little grouping. And it was just, I'm getting teary-eyed actually just thinking about it, because it was just such an excellent addition to this mural, and it made it even more special.
You can see more of Lacy's work on our website, wvpublic.org. Coming up, a conversation about forks, knives, and spoons with Virginia writer Jim Minnick. You're Inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, educating the people of our region and beyond for more than 150 years. More information at concord.edu.
Author Jim Minnick is a regular at Appalachian book and literary festivals. Minnick grew up in Pennsylvania, on the edge of the Appalachian Mountains. He made a career as a writing professor, teaching at colleges and universities in Georgia, South Carolina, and southwestern Virginia, where he still lives. Minnick retired from full-time teaching in 2020, though he still heads up writing workshops. He's the author or editor of 8 books. His latest is a volume of poetry titled The Intimacy of Spoons. Producer Bill Lynch spoke with Minnick about Appalachian book festivals and writing about silverware.
Would you like to read something?
Let's start with The Spoon, the first poem from The Intimacy of Spoons. So, to spoon. To spoon is not to fork. That's what we do to steaks and roads and manure. The fork is to pierce, penetrate, puncture. The fork is to split and branch, to pay up and cough out, but also to tune. We forklift crates, we pitchfork hay. The devil never carries a spoon. Can you bang forks and get a song? To spoon is not to knife. That's what we do too often to bodies and silence. To knife is to slice, to stab and wound, to skin and fillet and butcher. To knife is to dam water that once spooned the land. Can you play knives without getting hurt? Yet the tool is innocent. A fork feeds or gigs. A spoon ladles soup or cooks heroin. And a knife, the scalp and the scalpel both require a sharp blade. Listen to the drumming of the spoons. To spoon is to slip into sleep in the same soft, slow breath, to listen to the rain with one ear.
I love that one. It also leads off very neatly into my first question. So the book is called The Intimacy of Spoons, and there are several spoon poems in there. So why spoons? Why the title?
Why spoons indeed? Why write a whole book about silverware? A fork and a knife could be very dangerous, whereas the spoon can be used in many different ways. So the very first poem of the collection is the title poem. I wrote that probably at least 15 years ago. I didn't know it was going to be the title poem. I didn't know I was going to write a whole book about silverware. But just the more I thought about the idea of a spoon and how that echoes in so many different ways, that seems fitting, and hopefully it works as an image and a metaphor.
Can you give us a kind of a brief history of you and especially your writing life?
Brief history. All right. So I started out as a poet in elementary school. Favorite teacher was Mrs. Holler, 6th grade, and she very much nurtured my gift with words, or my love of words. And we all were madly in love with Mrs. Holler. And at some point, I wrote a poem called Hot Lips Holler. I'm not sure how it happened, but she had me read it in front of the whole class. And I think she was as embarrassed as I was. And so that was kind of the beginning of my poetry and publication. And so she is still alive, and she still comes to readings and is still a good friend. So yeah, that's a little bit of the genesis. And so it just kept going.
I've read recently about how the human mind changes over the course of time. Our intelligence tends to be more innovative in the beginning, but as we age, we become more, as they call it, crystalline, which is we're more organized. Are the ideas easier to come up with now, or were they easier, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago?
I think that I haven't really sensed that much of a difference. The ideas still come. What doesn't come nearly as enough is the time to be persistent with it all. But thankfully, I think the ideas still come pretty regularly. I think one of the things, the older you get, is that hopefully the better you understand your own process and what you need to create that space, and then kind of keep directing that, creating that space, and then also pushing yourself to create something of value.
What do you think of the quality of Appalachian writers? How are we doing?
Oh, I think we're doing great. I'm so glad I've landed here because I've found it to be such a nurturing place. Physically, I love this place. I love where we live. I love the waters and foods that we can grow and the trees that we can walk through. But as far as the writing community, I really very much have been nurtured by so many teachers as well as writers who I've come to first read and admired, and then I've come to call friends. And so I think the Appalachian writer community is very strong, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. And I guess one of the big parts of that was the Appalachian Writers Workshop, Appalachian Writers Community, but specifically focused in Hindman, Kentucky, which I've gone there, I think, since 1998, off and on, not every year, but most years. And it's just a fascinating, rich, and nurturing place.
So you're involved with literary festivals in the area. Talk a little about that.
There's been a great blossoming of festivals in, I think, the region as well as the country around literature in the last, 20, 25 years. And just like from small to large, they just seem to keep growing. So just some that I've been part of, both in many different capacities. Just locally here in our county, in Wythe County, Virginia, there's a very small one that has been going on for several years, but we're getting a little larger. It's tied to creative writing contests, mainly for regional writers and especially students, and then larger. There's Abingdon, Virginia has an annual one, and then in the fall there's two that I'm part of in mountains of North Carolina. One in Ashe County called On the Same Page, and another a little further west and south in Burnsville called Carolina Mountain Literary Festival. And both of those are tiny communities, not real big towns or communities, but they're really amazingly full schedules with lots to offer to the community and the writers too. It's a great fun time to be with all these different genres and just to see what's going on in the wider world, and to celebrate all these new books. And probably one of the largest ones in the region is the Southern Festival of the Book in Nashville. And, that's Southern in scope, but I think regularly have a strong Appalachian influence. And it's in October. And I know, I've been to the West Virginia Book Festival, and I know Virginia has one. There's just, it's wonderful to see. Most of these have some kind of a teaching component at all levels, high school children to adults. And I just think it'd be great if Inside Appalachia did a whole festival road trip. You could have fun doing that, maybe, or not.
I'll pitch it to the boss. We'll see if we can get it done. The book is called The Intimacy of Spoons by Jim Minnick. Jim, thanks a lot.
Thank you so very much, Bill. It's great to be part of this program. I've listened to it for many, many years, so this is a great honor. So thank you for all your work.
The presidential election gave rise this year to a national conversation about the effects of old age, like forgetfulness and the decline of mental sharpness. For adult children of aging parents, the onset of those symptoms can be tough to navigate. Teresa Morris is program director for the West Virginia chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. WVPB News Director Eric Douglas spoke with Morris about how families can better cope.
So let's talk about for a second the warning signs of cognitive decline, of onset of Alzheimer's, dementia. What are the things to look for?
So the association has created 10 warning signs that we look for in individuals. Now, I will preface it by saying you may have one of these symptoms, you might have 3, you might have 2 today and 2 different ones tomorrow.
Because it does come and go, right?
Especially in the beginning,
Right.
It does kind of come and go. So it's not that you need to see every one of these symptoms before you think there's an issue. This is just kind of a guiding principle of what you might think about. The first is memory loss that disrupts a person's life.
I mean, no, we all honestly, where are my keys? Or I forgot.
Absolutely.
So that's not really what we're talking about.
Right. So this is more, you tell your mom, you call her at 9 and say, Mom, I'm on my way. You have a doctor's appointment at 10:30. And you get there and she has no idea why you're there. She has no idea that she even has a doctor's appointment. She might not be dressed. And we always say these issues are worth evaluating when they're affecting a person's independence. Like you said, we all forget things. I mean, we just do. But it's when that forgetfulness starts impacting their safety, their independence, their ability to live alone. Something else we look at is, or a sign that can be, is challenges in planning or solving problems. So maybe all of a sudden mom is having trouble with her checkbook. All of a sudden you go in and there's a stack of bills on the counter where mom always paid her bills on the exact due date. These folks might have trouble completing familiar tasks. Maybe all of a sudden driving is more difficult for an individual. And not even so much the act of driving, but maybe forgetting where the grocery store is.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
when it's 2 blocks away and they've been there 100
yes,
times. Right?
When it's 2 blocks away and they've always driven to that one. Maybe you go in and Dad doesn't have groceries and he says he's fine. You've called him. And he said, "Oh, I have food. I'm good." But you go in and there's nothing. And maybe he is having trouble developing a list.
Right. Okay.
We also see confusion with time or place. So a person living with dementia, they might forget where they are. So we hear a lot of times these folks wanting to go home. And people say, we are home. This is where you raised your kids. But chances are they're looking for the home they grew up in.
And I've heard that a lot, that it's the short-term memory. It's the nearer-term memory that goes away. But the older memories tend to come back. So I hadn't thought about that. So they're literally thinking, where I want to go to my childhood home.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. And that we could do a whole nother segment on memory, but short-term memories just haven't been encoded and they haven't been stored as long. And so it has to do more with recall and recollection and even attention. That's why the short-term memories often fade a lot quicker. These folks are going to have trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships, so they might not be able to judge distance as adequately. These folks will have like a shuffled gait sometimes, and it's not so much due to a physical impairment, but it's an issue with their visual conception. So they might look at a set of stairs and they can't judge the 6 inches for them to step up. So they might trip. They might trip on rugs. They might even have trouble going through thresholds, which would be like maybe from the kitchen to the living room because one's tile and one's carpet. So they have trouble with that transition because it looks differently. Something else we look for are new problems with words in speaking and or writing. You know, they may forget names, maybe of their family, maybe of close acquaintances. They also may call everyday objects by the wrong name. Sometimes these folks make up words. Sometimes in the middle of speaking, they stop because they can't formulate the words that they're trying to say. And again, they're not trying to be difficult, or they're not trying to, speak with that type of language. They just can't process the language that's needed for speaking.
That was Teresa Morris from the Alzheimer's Association, speaking with Eric Douglas. A lot of people who serve time in prison struggle with reentry back into society. That's the focus of the latest episode of Us and Them. Host Trey K spoke with Thomas Murphy, known as Tom Tom. Here's an excerpt about what happened after Murphy's release.
So Tom Tom takes his $35 and goes to a halfway house. He stays there for 6 months, as long as he can pay rent. While he's there, he gets a driver's license. He's able to finance a vehicle, but he can't pay rent. So he's asked to leave. He packs up all of his things and stays on his brother's couch temporarily.
I went and filed application. You got to pay for them fees, them application. So I asked one lady, how far you go back? She said indefinitely. So I said, you a church-going woman? She said, yeah. I said, how did you get your job? She thought I was being smart. I said, last time I know, couldn't nobody cast a stone. I had to get my brother, with his good credit, his good life that he built, to co-sign for me, to get me a place.
Tom Tom's working, setting up theater lights. He's living in the apartment he got thanks to his brother. Then one day, he's on his way to pick up his paycheck. He's waiting at a stoplight, and he's hit by another car.
T-bone in the side, I don't know how. It's like you sitting here. The seatbelt choked me, glasses way over there. 61-year-old, my back is killing me. I already hurting from prison. The car is gone. I can't work.
He goes to physical therapy and applies for unemployment, which he still hasn't received. He stays in good communication with his apartment manager every week. He says the woman there is kind, and he finds some odd jobs just to get by and to afford another car.
Because again, I'm determined. I know I got to get money. And I told the lady at the office, ma'am, I got you, I know, but I've been in a wreck. And I told her, ma'am, now I am 60% ready I can go back to work. They got it in my files. She looked me in the eye and all that, yeah. I go to work that Tuesday. I get off of work, hard work.
But at that point, he was 3 months behind in rent. So he was evicted. All his possessions were put in the dumpster.
All my property is gone. I had to sit there all night cold with a long cord for my phone charger to protect my bed. 2 o'clock, people pulled up, try to get it. 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, they pulled up in a red truck. I said, leave my bed alone. So in the morning, I get a U-Haul, take my bed, get my blood pressure medicine out of the house. The sheriff came out and opened and gave my medicine.
So, 4 years after his release from prison, Tom Tom is starting over, trying to find housing with a felony record. He's bouncing around from pay-by-the-week hotels to his brother's couch and hanging on to the resources he does have.
I talked to a lot of spiritual people that the night when I prayed. I cried. I ain't got no more damn tears. I done cried enough. God bless me. My thrill and my journey is to help out on this planet.
That excerpt is from West Virginia Public Broadcasting's award-winning Us and Them podcast. The episode is Reentry. To hear the entire program, visit our website, wvpublic.org. Us and Them is supported by the West Virginia Humanities Council, the CRC Foundation, and the Just Trust. It's been a year since Pennsylvania's largest coal-fired power plant shut down. Like hundreds of these plants around the country, the Homer City Generating Station faced competition from cheaper natural gas and renewables. The Allegheny Front's Reed Frazier went to Homer City to find out how the closure is affecting a community that relied on this plant for decades.
Jeremiah Baltzer started working at the Homer City power plant in the early 2000s. He was 20 years old. He liked his job as a union carpenter, building scaffolding inside the plant.
When you're younger, yes. You get to climb around and be a little monkey and, be physical and learn a lot, you know what I mean? Learn a lot about the plant and just work hard.
He put in many hours maintaining a facility that burned coal to make electricity for 2 million homes in Pennsylvania and surrounding states.
You're on call pretty much 24 hours a day, You may not be told that, but that's kind of how you have to do it in order to kind of stick around. So
these days, Baltzer has a lot more time to spend with his wife and 4 children, which he's doing today at a local park, not far from his house in the borough of Homer City. The town, an hour east of Pittsburgh, sits a few miles from the power plant, which boasts the tallest smokestack in the U.S. It's surrounded by cornfields, forests, and old strip mines. Baltzer was able to support his family with what he made there, but a few years ago, he began thinking his job wasn't going to last forever.
I figured way before a lot of people thought so, just the political winds, the way they were blowing, kind of gave you some forethought into the future.
The rise of cheap natural gas from fracking spelled trouble for coal. On top of that, regulations on coal's toxic pollution were imposing costs on plant owners. Homer City started running less often. Its parent company filed for bankruptcy in 2017 and cut down on maintenance. The workforce dwindled to just 129, a far cry from its highest point.
Yeah, it was definitely weird. It went from you're seeing 1,500 people a day on a job during an outage, and then all of a sudden, boom, you don't see anybody all day.
Then finally, the plant closed for good last year. Though the news was somewhat expected, it still was a gut punch for many in the area.
So, and I know they cut their staff and everything, but we never really thought it would completely shut down, and unfortunately it did.
At her salon along Homer City's quiet Main Street, Connie Cimino is giving a late afternoon haircut to a local customer. She has relatives and friends who are employed at the plant, and she worries about how many former workers are faring. Whenever she drives into town, Cimino says she notices there's nothing coming out of its smokestacks.
And it's sad to not see them working, because you go by and you don't see the stacks working at all, and that's sad.
Those stacks meant jobs, but they also meant pollution. The plant was one of the largest polluters in the state. Coal is still the biggest source of climate-warming greenhouse gases from the power sector, even though it only provides 16% of the nation's electricity. But people here have more immediate concerns, like paying for a new furnace at the local elementary school.
We had 8 days this past school year where we did not have heat in the elementary building.
Ralph Ciceri is superintendent of the Homer Center School District, which sits within sight of the power plant. The district still gets property taxes from the plant, which accounts for about 4% of its budget. But Ciceri knows that could evaporate in the years to come.
We think about it every day. We are planning cautiously.
While the district is repairing the elementary school's heating system before the fall, it's holding off on a more long-term fix that would be more efficient.
Everything we do is with the reminder that things could change significantly for us.
Coal has a long history in this region, and the plant closure is just one of many of the industry's losses here. About 20 mines around the county have closed in the last 30 years. Rob Nymick is borough manager of Homer City. He says for years, county officials fought to keep the coal industry afloat. But at this point, it looks like that battle has been lost.
My thought process is, okay, what do we need to do to move forward? Because it's gone.
He sees one potential answer running through the middle of Homer City, Yellow Creek. Nymick takes his work truck to a spot near the coal-stained stream.
But just look at the orange. There isn't a thing alive in that stream.
The orange is mine drainage seeping out of long-closed mines upstream. It chokes out aquatic life. Nymick wants to clean it up. He envisions tourists coming one day to fish, hunt, and paddle the streams here. A state grant is helping assess the cleanup of Yellow Creek. Nymick also envisions a bike trail winding through the area.
You know, wouldn't this be a wonderful place someday if this stream is clean and we have the largest kids fishing tournament and we have all the room in the world to do this here.
And the former plant worker, Jeremiah Baltzer, says he's looking forward to life after the closure. He and his wife had thought about leaving the area, but recently they've had a change of heart. He's working other union carpentry jobs, and they've been going to a local church and have found a sense of community there.
And we found a good core group of people that are really caring, so we're probably going to stick around. So I guess we'll do something else.
And there's a chance something else will replace the power plant. It still has a connection to the electric grid, and the Biden administration is working with regional officials to access federal incentives to help transition coal communities. The County Redevelopment Authority says more than 50 developers have made inquiries on the site, but nothing official has been announced. I'm Reed Frazier.
A lot of us meet up with our friends and family through screens. Whether it's games or sharing videos and voice chats, that communication can all be pretty noisy. Now a group in Morgantown, West Virginia has come up with a way to be together in silence and in person. WVPB's Chris Schultz reports.
Standing atop Cooper's Rock, overlooking the Cheat River far below on a recent Sunday morning, the sound that pervades is the wind in the treetops. You would be excused for not noticing that a group of about a dozen people has congregated on the rock for their monthly meeting. They're all sitting, reading silently, together. This is the Silent Book Club.
You read whatever you want, and you socialize if you want to, and it's a great way to meet new people, get book recommendations, and kind of just get more familiar with the community in this town that loves to read, because surprisingly, lots of people here love to read.
Nedda Abudaya is a Morgantown native and the founder of the city's Silent Book Club chapter. Originating in San Francisco over a decade ago, there are now more than 1,000 Silent Book Club chapters in 50 countries around the world, led by local volunteers like Abudaya. According to a chapter map, some pun intended, on the organization's website, there are at least 6 other groups in West Virginia, including Huntington, Charleston, and a second chapter in Morgantown. After growing up with her nose in a book, Abudaya says she recently realized that she stopped making time for reading in her life. Whenever she did, distractions were many, so she registered the Morgantown chapter late last year as a way to get herself back into reading.
This is like a small window of time, twice a month, to meet with people and just focus solely on reading, which is nice. Everyone around you is reading. It's not the same thing, and there's no obligation to socialize, but we're all there reading together, so it's awesome. I got a lot of reading done.
Something Abudaya mentioned just there that is the key to the enjoyment of Silent Book Club is that unlike traditional book clubs, everyone reads whatever they like. Abudaya herself is reading 2 books in Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass series. Taylor Goldberg is one of Abudaya's friends and a regular at the Silent Book Club. He says reading different books provides its own unique opportunities, while still allowing members to discuss their latest literary adventures.
Yeah, we're probably going to be talking about books we're reading. So with this Silent Book Club, you get to pick your own book and read it, but it definitely gives you ideas of things to read in the future. In the past, I've I've talked about reading with my friend Lake, and he's given me some new books to read, so that's been kind of cool. So it's a great way to talk about the books you're reading.
Goldberg says the group usually meets in cafes and restaurants. Abudaya says supporting and exploring local businesses was also a motivation for starting the group, but the outdoor location is a welcome change.
Before it was more cafe and restaurant settings. This is out in nature. It's kind of therapeutic with a nice breeze going on, and you get these awesome views, and you're reading. So I like this idea of doing a little reading session, and then we're also planning on doing a hike afterwards, so that should be fun.
For Anthony Guzzi, who's reading Lucky Red by Claudia Cravens, by the way, the chance to read outside is a welcome emphasis on the silent part of the Silent Book Club.
Well, a lot of the places that we've been to have been, even though it's supposed to be a silent reading club, have been kind of busy and noisy because like the places we go to are still like operating normally. So being able to get outside at a place like this, it's just a lot more comfortable and relaxing.
That said, Guzzi is grateful for the group and says he hopes to have the chance to keep coming back. There seems to be no cause for concern about shutting down because Abudaya is just getting started. She talks about organizing a meetup between state or even regional chapters, maybe at the October West Virginia Book Festival. Abudaya says the group will continue to move around the region for the foreseeable future.
Because West Virginia has, well, Morgantown specifically, has a lot of like small businesses. Going to different places, it's a good way to like show people that there's a lot more to Morgantown than just like the big chains and all that stuff. And some of the locations that we've been to, people will come up to me and be like, I didn't know this coffee shop was here. This coffee here is fantastic. Or I didn't know we had this bar. Like, this is awesome.
The group's next meeting will be at a local public library, July 9th. A nice ease back into the hustle and bustle of the group's usual haunts. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Chris Schultz in Morgantown.
Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Ed Snodderly, James Michael Stevens, Morgan Wade, John Blissard, Tim Bing, Sierra Farrell, and Kaya Cater. Bill Lynch is our producer. Xander Alloy is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Chris Julin. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe or stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, focusing on students' futures. Classes available at concord.edu/apply.